Just about 40 minutes. Halfway up. It's just before you get out. Yes. You're talking reinforcing your thing. And then when you put the water in, when you put the water, you feel like saying, I'm actually giving water to you. So these things,
So we'll start with Lamrim Yoga, this little booklet on page 7. From the heart of the Saviour of the 100 deities of Geshe, on the peak of the cloud resembling a clump of extremely white fresh curd. King of Dharma, omniscient Los Angeles, please come here together with your son. Your holy mind has the intelligence that understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech with its excellent explanation is the ear ornament for those of good fortune. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful with glory renowned. To you who are meaningful to see, hear, and remember, I prostrate. Pleasing drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incense, light, scented waters, and so forth. Oceans and cloud-like offerings were actually arranged and mentally emanated. I offer to you this sincerely field of merit. Whatever non-virtues the body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the 3 bars that I have collected from the beginning of this time, I confess each and every one with fervent regret from my heart. You strove for much learning and practice in this eternal age and made your freedoms and refuges meaningful. By abandoning the 8 worldly concerns, Saviour, we sincerely rejoice in your existence. perfect, pure, holy, Gurus from the living light of wisdom and compassion in the sky of the Dharmakaya. Please let fall a rain of profound and extensive Dharma upon the receptacle of those to be subdued, exactly as they be. May whatever virtue I have collected benefit the teachings and all transmigratory beings, and in particular may cause the essence of perfect pure Losandraka's teachings to shine forever. Saji Perkishu Jin Me Chotan, Reviving Jin Ye Bin Padi, Sanye Jin Jin Me Oai, Unanda Chukashu. By the merits of having offered this mandala to the Lamrim from Kappa and his two sons, may I, my family members, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Losandraka, who had the morality of an eminently pure way of life, was courageous in extensive conduct, the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of the two stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. By the force of having fervently requested in this way, all the beings of that light are remitted from the hearts of perfect pure Father and sons, and combining into one enter my heart. White nectar, the colour of milk, flows from the opening of the tube of white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative karmas, obscurations, and ignorance without exception. My body becomes as pure and clear as crystal. On page 13, we'll recite the 5-line Miksema in the middle there 3 times. Mik me se wei te chen chen re si, tri me ken pe wang po jang ko yan, do po ma lu chon se song wei da, gan chi ke me su gen song ka pa, no san cha pe shan la su wa de, mi me se wei te chen chen re si, tri me ken pe wang po jang ko yan, do po ma lu chon se song wei da, gan chi ke me su gen song ka pa, no san cha pe shan la su wa de, mi me se wei te chen resi, dream making bell on Ponchon Poya, Dopo Malo Shonse Samrita, Kanchen Kepe Sugen Sunkapa, no Sancha Krishan Das Moade.
Sangi Chedan Soji Chonon La Chanchu Badu Dani Kersunchi La Yeshu Shingi Sonan Drola Beche Sangi Rubara Sho Sangi Chedan Soji Chonon La Chanchu Badu Dani Kersunchi Dagi Chuchi Sonan Drola Beche Sangi Rubara Sho Sangi Chonan Soji Chonon La Chanchu Badu Dani Kersunchi Dagi Chuchi Even Sonan Drola Beche Sangi Rubara Sho Kangi Tuzini Zone Tawa Tamsi Pambi Chere Tambi Chun Dunzi Kodum Kela Chansi Good morning, everyone. Thank cousin Lamrim Something more shooting that somebody Teresa and Chomoni Rangula Chabata, Shingula Damos, Tendavadi Rangula Tata Torgosos. Omanimbalis, Chopslong, Semdong, Sevan Tommy, Sheson the Ter, Cholon Rangula Chapata, Shingula Damo, Tendavadi Rangula Tam Torgosos.
So we're going to pick up on the point that we left off in the previous session. We've been looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's middling presentation on the success of the path of enlightenment, and we're currently covering the section that explains the way to rely upon a spiritual teacher. So first off, we looked at the defining characteristics of a spiritual teacher, and in the previous session, we started to look at the qualifications or defining characteristics of a student that relies upon a teacher. So we're going to pick up from that section in the text. Let's look at where we are. So characteristics of the one who relies, the student. We had we started to read through that section. First of all, looking at the characteristics, impartial, intelligent, full of endeavor, and so forth. And then when we look at the explanation of the specifics of various characteristics and details, it says, in this regard, impartial means without bias. If you have a bias, it will make you obscured. You will not perceive excellent qualities, and therefore you will fail to find the meaning of the excellent explanations.
총롱기 삼바다 태와 지당기 총롱기 삼바디기 가른 거긴 지고레스라운디 무요네수 체야야 아니 총롱기 삼바디기 거긴 지고레스 간지 랑기 남주 콤펠 땅야야 아니 가겐디 쪼디 총롱기 삼비 지고연자 아니 초송노닝 말레스 총롱 예메디 소주 gelaya 따chen 아니 기지 총롱기 삼바요나 돌고레스
And also it says here, in the essence of the middle way, one whose mind is tormented by bias will never be able to realize peace. So a sense of bias, partiality, is what prevents us from seeing reality, the way that things exist. And in order to make a progress, in order to improve our mind, we have to rid ourselves of that sense of bias. If we don't rid ourselves of partiality, of being biased, we will not be able to make a great progress. So it's crucial that we look inwardly, that we look at our mind and assess whether we are subject to a sense of partiality.
Terida ro chonong sambe muyu netsulaya pegi ta demba tsolto mares demba kan badi ro ani chonong sambe suzu chosong sagi shengo chesa di ani zuma chiena ya dipa gotob chia ta tisongju chia magasa di demba chiena ya dipa ani zonzo chia ge ani tabji chia so tu ro di ani demba tomato ya kanji suzu demba tomato ya demba mantona demba she tu maros demba she matuna dembi lamla ya ro tu maros ra dembi lamla ro matuna ani chug chinabdi sangi chug chinabdi jugya mebadi Geshe gyata mainza ani chongong sambadi ngibar to torko gres ra.
If we are subject by a sense of partiality, to a sense of partiality, we will not be able to see what is real, what is true. And if we are not able to see the truth, what is real, we will take sides. We'll align ourselves with those that are close to our heart. And we're going to see whatever they say or true as necessarily being true. And we're going to see those that we dislike, those that we see as our enemies, whatever they do, whatever they say, we will perceive to be false or a lie. That is our mind behaves when it is subject to a sense of partiality. We're unable to correctly, accurately see what is real or what is not real, what is true and what is not true. So if we do have that sense of partiality, we will not be able to follow the path of the truth. We'll not be able to properly follow the path of the teachings that the Buddha laid out if a mind is subject to partiality.
Ona tetsamji chokam nyamnas chonong samba meba samji digres na tetsamu digmares lo surbu nejans ane surbu nejan lekshi lam yanda ta nyeshi lam tanan jibi lo yu tumena nod moronges sangi ge ta neluk tembi chu neluk tembi ge nod morongwe teni kovi lo de dembashi kosos.
Is that enough? It's not enough, as the text says. To be biased means to be attached to one's approach and to hate others' approach. Having examined like this in your own continuum, you should discard it. And then, is that by itself sufficient? If someone does not have the intelligence to distinguish between good ways of explaining and faulty ways of explaining that seem the same, he or she is not a suitable vessel, even though they're impartial. Therefore, one needs to have the intelligence and understand those two.
오늘 대니 잠지기 초그레 세나스 대니 유경 르뮤 추님 추님 따라 소나 너드모로에스 되니 첨보다 덴바 고소스 제발리 최다 최모가 그거다 이또고 니네니 나 손소스.
So is being impartial and also being intelligent enough? Are they sufficient? Lamrim Kappa says that it is those two qualities are not enough. You need another one. Even if one has the two, impartiality and intelligence, someone who is just like the listener to the Dhamma in a lifeless picture is not a suitable vessel. Therefore, one also needs to have great endeavor. The commentary states that the two, respect for the Dhamma and the expounder of the Dhamma, as well as an attentive mind, are added, so that 5 characteristics are set forth.
그다데 가르친 거는 다 패시디 인지리 르뮤 위치 년 바탈 손은 너드모로세디 먼저 르무 튀온디 르무 라온디 르무디 파쇼기 찍빙을 쇼응을 파 디엘라야 레마도 셈길로츠 자르고 말와스 상기기 람얀다다 아니 야다 마인비 넘버친 셰바디 랑기 귤츠 자르치니 마님바이나 아니 펜도요 말레스 딘자 디 랑기 츠 귤 자발라 아니 쉐가 되니르침보다 아니 쳔모를 그바 간지 딘디기 아니 삼로니 손제 톤 메나 쳔니바디 랑귤 자바디 카부쇼지 차원자 어디니 내치는 다 간지 돌드나 아니 딘디기 계중가디 아니 보면 생이 되면 임바이나 아니 생이 등한 상고그레스.
So what is this section saying? Well, a person might be impartial. They might be intelligent. And yet the way that they listen to the teachings would be like watching a painting on the wall or painting on a canvas. So rather than listening in such a way in which kind of you just look at it, something external, you should say, how does it apply to me? How does it apply to my mind? So this is the attitude that you should have as a student. So you should have great yearning or striving to have endeavor in the teachings, but also to have a sense of trust and faith, a sense of respect in the teachers and teaching. So these qualities are also necessary for a student that relies upon the teacher.
대단한 줄로 되니르체와 니비지기 레버 템바 쳐도 치모와 그거치고 줘봐 니시 돈 레신 좀바디 요 시부틴 튕기는 로다 덴바이비스 남자들 덴바이비 가디엔 토르와니 소원네 보고 라미 찌롱이 쳐되는 상만서 따라 차나 가와고 마서나 치마 춘지도 상위길라 베버 차오스.
So then the next point says, specifics of achieving the conducive conditions and eliminating the adverse conditions to having the 4 characteristics. So that being so, therefore, great endeavor with regard to the Dhamma, a completely attentive mind while listening, great respect for the Dhamma and the expounder of the Dhamma. And the 4th one is holding to good explanations, having rejected faulty ones. Intelligence is a conducive circumstance for those 4, and impartiality is what eliminates adverse circumstances.
Redat sumbas tedar hada demba di soman sinye de demba di ani laman sinye de demba de harsha bata talas sinye de demba la chuji kadre number chao tedar kadre number cheda khabar de yonsu zobe dangaki lo lebar tibi sinye de demba sulani sambitem so de jevite bi solos.
And the last point in that section is an exhortation to strive for those characteristics. So you should examine whether or not all the qualities that would make you suitable to be guided by a guru are complete, and cultivate joy if they are. If they are not complete, you should strive after the causes for them to be complete before the next life. So having explained the qualifications of a fully qualified student, the Lama Tsongkhapa explains the way to rely upon a spiritual teacher. First off, the first point is an explanation of the need to rely on someone with the characteristics, and then the actual manner of relying on someone who has the characteristics. And it says, third, thus someone endowed with the characteristics of a vessel should examine the way explained above whether or not the teacher has the characteristics, and if so, obtain the kindness of the Dhamma from them. Then the actual manner of relying on someone who has the characteristics is divided into two sections: the manner of relying in thought and the manner of relying in actions.
Can Geshe elaborate a little bit more on the quality of student? It's not engineering.
And?
Not familiar.
Okay, so could Geshe elaborate a little bit more about the quality of a student? L'homme tseni des shedwa, chezan dile manga des giabo sun tu sarves.
Tene mangje da shie de da shie jragroas. Ineya go ngejin sama nenga dida ganya 상대 유로 중 예통도 있어.
다 그런 냐만데 코니메 산데. So Geshe says that, of course, when you elaborate on the qualifications of a student, there's much to be said. But to begin with, Lamrim Tsongkhapa presented all the qualities of a student in a concise but also a complete way.
Lama da Goma Singi and Kid the Lord Tevatau, changing Maris, Betty showers, but Tambu two on the any two about the Shuji Biglia, any Gando the Chick, Tabayo the Shuchi and the Chick Sugar, Shumagon the Chick Shuchi, and Dindiche, that Dinepa pass and draw on the I think she me can't on there the Chavana, and Yanga Chagores. There's a Tambu, and 당부 간주 통야디 미 sobda 지게제시 남발라 소바 아니 다 디디마도 베기 대응마 아니 라미주 연된디 통투야디 카부차고라스 라 인자 안 당분이 지 순라지 투바이나 아니 지조는 미용이 담용이 다 잠을 순라지 투바이나 남사 비려야 아니 땡초조 제디 원이다 이때 야구요 말했어
It is said that a student that follows a teacher shouldn't do so in the manner of a dog chasing after a piece of meat. In that sense, if you throw a dog a piece of meat or you lure it with a piece of meat, they will follow you wherever you go. So a student shouldn't behave like that, in a sense that you might meet a certain teacher and they might seem to you to be, they have a good appearance, they have charisma and so forth. And you might immediately generate some trust or faith in that person. But it is likely that you haven't really assessed the good qualities, whether they have the qualifications, whether they have the characteristics of a spiritual teacher. So just being attracted to a certain person or finding some person to be impressive or having some charisma, immediately having faith in that person is not the right approach. If this is the approach that you take, then it might be that for the time being, you find that person to be, to have a certain sense of allure, but there's a danger that after some time you will find fault in that person. So rather than following a guru, a lama in that way, you should do it in a way that is different. First of all, assess that person, see whether they have the right qualification or characteristics. It wouldn't be right to follow a spiritual teacher in the way that we create connections or relationship in our everyday society. So in society, you might be drawn to someone that can speak well or that has a certain appearance, it is not right to follow a spiritual teacher in a similar manner.
There's a one lama tag words that lama tag said the lama dance of Jelaya, lama tachi chico, kejadi, ingimaris. Lama dance of Jelaya, lama tachi chedi, and too late chat words.
So first off, you should assess that person, and then you can decide whether you're going to follow that person or rely upon that person as your spiritual teacher. But if you have first of all relied upon them as a spiritual teacher, and only after that you assess them to see whether they have the qualification of spiritual teacher, that's too late.
Did dinza that lama madin ko lama le that should be that kaso tanganzuge machine tayo maras medi zambala ani kari shegi yobati chu shegi yode me tolya ani nyenchin tagoyachi ta ngebar chagoras ta dichi zambala dia kal khagoras chichidi ben ani lamrim mamolaya chu chichi shi nyambalaya lama matena ani nyemichibu shoji soyaji yores tainaya design gawrmuchige zodi karso tachi ani ngesam zo ani nubsho balaya sungu sar sangtus ani lama mademi chenyechi ta chusena kanji ani nambi gi chulya lobjong chechi sungu yores ta dinji doji gi nganzola kogo yoba ani yakshu di lama maden teba mashani ani nyentu baina tadi dinji yoba ina yakshu reshas ta yina ya bena lamram roji chanzan nyenji ani chi shongkabung nga chanzan nyenji tanda ngi kerana takji chi slab deba ina ani khawar rejil drugiyeme bena nga rojina labthugumudo sira.
So how do we assess a lama, a teacher? It's not that we have a special X-ray machine that will be able to show all the characteristics of a spiritual teacher in a technical way. So in order to assess the qualities of a spiritual teacher, you need to have prior knowledge. You need to know what to check. Right? So it's not that you can assess or check a spiritual teacher without having prior knowledge. So that becomes quite complicated because when you look at the explanation of the steps of the path of enlightenment, you find statements such as you need to rely upon a teacher, even to the extent where a person that teaches you even a single verse or 4 lines, that person is someone that you should rely upon as a spiritual teacher. So how do we actually combine these 2 explanations together? It's honestly the Dalai Lama that has a more contemporary approach, and in the way that is teaching people that are coming from outside the Buddhist tradition, that were born, let's say, in this environment or Western culture and so forth. He says the way that you rely upon a teacher as a student is similar to the way that you would follow an education system. So first of all, you gather knowledge, you gather information. So you attend classes and teachings and so forth, you build up your knowledge. And you can do that even before relying upon a spiritual teacher. Having said that, if you take a lot of time to study from a teacher the whole presentation of the steps of the path of enlightenment, and also you complete your study of the 5 great classics, and you still have that mental idea that you still need to assess the spiritual teacher, that you're still checking out the spiritual teacher, Geshe is not sure that you're doing it right.
yolo mambu jilaya ko phami ni ma gyubi gi ani thebi gi samlo di ani rangsing gi 소르지 슈침부 슈지어라스 다 딘디 토니 엔 추시바이나 라마 템벌레 로기도스 티지디다 아니 베나다 노쇼 롬바도이나 비 대바샤탄디 고 파민마 기반 메디게 람상 피 대바키야티 카고슈도스 딘자다 디 장니 아니 시니 대바키야치 아니 대베토니다 라미잔 추슈야치 용사로스 딘자 디디도 차바이나 아니 야슈 템슈치 모동이 캐란 라마 땡기스 라바이나야 셈나 대바메나 아니 라마 템벌레 조야디야 카고레도스라.
And then when you decide to rely upon a spiritual teacher, the reliance upon a spiritual teacher means that you have faith in that spiritual teacher. And with faith, when you receive teachings from that person, even insofar as one line of teachings, with faith, you need to rely upon the person as a spiritual teacher. You see that person as someone that you rely upon, which means that it all comes down to whether or not you have faith in that person. So how does it work? Well, you can say that those who are born into the Buddhist tradition, the ancestral tradition is the Buddhist tradition. And since this is the type of tradition that you grow up with from home, then you could say that a person that teaches you a particular thing, even if it's short, when faith arises in your mind towards the person, you can rely upon the person as a spiritual teacher. That's coming, let's say, from a tradition in which this is how you were brought up. But for most of us, it is different. For those who are born outside of the Buddhist tradition, rather than having the expectation that there would be faith that would spring up in our mind towards someone that teaches us even a single verse, first of all, we study. First of all, we learn. First of all, we gather knowledge. And then from that, faith will arise. So when you have an informed faith arising, which means faith that is born from the knowledge that you have generated, and then you generate faith in a certain person that is teaching, then you can rely upon the person as a spiritual teacher.
Lama tensavi jela, lama sunda jela ya tembainaya. Lama tensavi jela, and susu ngani. Nganasu chadam mosung kombu inza, kyen ton sigres. Yacha gyani jaja gochu kogu kyen ton sigres. Inza kyen tonaya, kyen guchon matebachi. Any yondeng guchon tatubaina, kevsandi susu legiores. Mi shingi kari lavjano, malavjano, susu ngani. 대바당는 장친 로고에디 소수기 케벤로스로 미 가르라나 말라는 케바 칸요 말스로 소수문이 라마 텐서비 젤이야 다가랑 아니 템부 토레 로투야는 베주치고 그랬어.
So you have assessed that person, you've decided to follow the person as a spiritual teacher. And once you follow them as a spiritual teacher, it is still possible that you will see faults in that person. It's not like there's not a fail-safe mechanism by which once you decide to follow that person, there will be no faults whatsoever that will appear to you. So you can say though predominantly you will be able to see their good qualities, more than 90% of good qualities, still it is still possible that there will be some percentage of faults that will appear to your mind. So how do you train in that scenario? From your side, as much as possible, you want to train yourself in observing the good qualities of that person and not attend your mind to the faults of that person. Not to focus on the drawbacks, but to focus on the good qualities. And in so doing, it might be possible, it is possible that people will have different views or different things to say. So rather than allowing your mind to be swayed by something that someone else says, make sure that you yourself become stable in the faith that you develop in that person, that you solidify the faith that you have in that person, rather than allowing your mind to sway back and forth to be affected by others. Once you've decided to rely upon that person, you should, as much as possible, attend your mind to the qualities, to the good qualities of that person, rather than focusing on the faults.
The migi chig lagudu samni tela 때는 로고 존나 안 간주 람가 자원이 라고 말했어. 미 카타원 대신에 라마라야 견다 고고요나 안 산지 좀 된들이야 카당에 열었어. 여러분들이야 카당에 열었어. 난 대바샤사 마랑에 차로었어. 딘자 소수문 아니 고축 차리지라 자원이 lögyo 말스더라. 카토네야 아니 지좀 멜란 안신기 까지 두리견 러바이나 산지 무드디 라마 디견 소소라 라야디 야샤 야타마레스 라메노 소수기오 요레 담아바 용초그레 아니 야스 잔주산바 용초그레 예라 다중바 용초그레 산지응무 용초그레 이는 소수응무는 따수디 아니 산지응무 난신기 산지랑 두시잔 대바다는 장 러바이나 라마 디견이 아니 산지기 꾸수투기 전에 상마디 소소라 라게 여바디 람름 gond은 다가라레스로
If you allow your mind to be swayed by things that other people say, you will never be able to develop that sense of stability. People will have different things to say. And it's not only possible about a spiritual teacher that you choose to follow. Even when you look at the life story of the Buddha, there were people that criticized the Buddha. There are people that criticize His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So it's not that you're going to find a situation where someone is completely free of criticism. So if you then think that I should definitely completely 100% follow what other people say, you'll never be able to find a spiritual teacher that will be free from criticism. So how then do we proceed? Well, first of all, as we said, you assess the person. Then you decide to rely upon the person. And once you have decided to rely upon the person as a spiritual teacher, then you should take up the training in the development of faith, in which you repeatedly think of their good qualities rather than their shortcomings, and not let your mind to be swayed by things that other people might have to say, which is somewhat similar to the way that Milarepa, the great Tibetan yogi, has trained in undergoing a variety of different types of hardships. So it is difficult, but in so doing, you receive through the Lama the siddhis, the blessings that come from the Buddha. So that Lama might appear to you in a certain manner. They appear to you as an ordinary being. There might be an ordinary person, there might be a bodhisattva, there might be an arhat, hero, solitary realizer arhat. There might be Buddha, and still the mental attitude that you adopt when you follow that person is in seeing them as Buddha, seeing them as Buddha in actuality. So this is what you do as a student. So regardless of what they are, they could be an ordinary person, and still in your mental attitude, you train in seeing them as being Buddha in actuality. And if you do that, through that you receive the blessings, the actual accomplishment from the Buddha. So although you rely upon the person, still they facilitate, you can say that they mediate the receiving of the blessings of the Buddha.
대바장 담보들이야 대바장 걸 쏜거도 아스라 저 대바장 걸 쏜디 담본니 대바 끼 대바지 용고 말어 왔어 대바 메시지를야 대바장니 대바 끼 듣고 걸었어 됐다.
So how do you do that? Well, you do that in the manner of relying on a spiritual teacher in thought, and then the manner of relying upon that person in actions. So it says, with regards to the manner of relying on a spiritual teacher from whom in general you obtain the kindness of the Dhamma, and who in particular guides your mind well by means of perfectly complete instructions, there are 2 points: the manner of relying in thought and the manner of relying through actions. The first is the manner of relying in thought, and the first point is the root training in faith. Now, when you train in faith, it's not that you first of all rely upon the person as a spiritual teacher, and following that you develop faith. You first of all start with faith. With faith, you decide to rely upon that person as a spiritual teacher. And having made a decision to rely upon that person as a spiritual teacher, then you still need to train your mind in developing faith in that person.
dire benata deba jangdang ro di ani benata chi namgyu chi chö ya ku she ding chö nyamne che ding jingbai na kamda mebe wangi ani deba ma ki sa tindi yongu do sa ngam sola yongu do sa ro da ditsola ya ani yonding chani samni ani deba jangbai na ani deba ki yongu ro sa ro 대박이지 어딘지진 간지 양 지소소래야 비기게 칼 라마데 매박이네야 베나 로종기 베나 따지 난주 로종 돌아야 아니 펜도만부 체자고요 바이나 아니 뉴스 가진에 때니 양 대박장에 된지야 연구였어레스 연구요레스라
Might be someone that can give a good explanation. There might be someone that has the qualities of practice. And yet, we do have different dispositions. We come from different backgrounds. We have different dispositions. So it's not that you will necessarily have faith in a certain person, even if they have those qualities that we have spoken of before. But once you find someone that does appeal to you and you can see the good qualities, then you develop faith through seeing the good qualities. So you see the good qualities of that person, and from that, naturally, faith arises. So how then do we approach that? Well, when we think of, for example, having studied a particular system, like, for example, training a mind, and we can see that a mind is being transformed through relying upon such instructions. And through that, you can appreciate the kindness of those instructions, but also of the person who gave you those instructions. And in so doing, you then come to appreciate the good qualities. So that could be one way of approaching it.
Yeah.
Mark?
If you say faith always has a religious undertone. But maybe it would be good if Geshe can elaborate a little bit what are characteristics of faith. How do you recognize faith?
All right.
What is really value of faith?
So I'm going to just repeat the question for the people at home that I have not heard it. So you said that faith has this religious undertone. So could Geshe elaborate on the qualities or characteristics of faith so that we can understand better what it is? Yeah. Dila 대바세야 디 추기 계셔다고 지 추기 땀된다고 지 거기 도서 네 대바세야 디 개추 거리 염에 세니카리 미 그런 제시각도 와이나스
제 지당 대바디 추 츠그랑 레스라 추 츠그랑 레스 다 대바세디 대바디 쪼디 이체래야 이지주고도스.
Yeah, indeed, faith is a word that is coming from a religious perspective. No, it's a word that is used in a religious context or a spiritual context. What it means basically is trust to believe.
다 대바 제사기 율디기 차니 아니 이치기 로디 대바 마인 비켜바도 패션 로그였어레스 이치 제사디 미기 위초지 임바이나 아니 딘디 이치디 아니 마데비 코멘토고레스 이치 제사디 게위 초고 취지 임바이나 딘디 이치디 안 데빗 초수 로고레스.
But still, we need to make some distinctions because although you could say that faith means trust, and what it means is that you trust the object of that faith, you trust something. The thing that you have faith in still needs to be on the virtuous side, because if you trust something that is on the non-virtuous side, you cannot say that this is faith. It is not faith, it is trust, but it is not faith. But if you trust something that is on the virtuous side, you can call it faith.
제 먼저 라마레 대바 용연디 가서 다지 솔와디 셰투문마도 라마디게 아니 고소투데 제바가 소바다 송코야가 소바 공고스 지위가야 믹세기 아니 셴다 만데비기 아니 간한기 그비 소와지 레고다스 다두디 대바키기 요레스라.
So if you have faith in the Lama, you can describe the feeling that arises in your mind with respect to the Lama, but rather than just kind of describing the feelings, it's more like you need to contextualize it in certain events. So when you think of, for example, the qualities of body, speech, and mind of that person, or when you receive teachings from that person, it might give rise to inspiration in your mind. There is that certain affinity or a sense of joy that arises in your mind when you receive teachings from that person. So that is an indication of having faith in that person.
Je bena giwi chulaya magawa kibadi madeba chagores. Megiwi chulaya gawa kibadi madeba chagores. Igalo pigigi kaso taji tatsuldi logado jingbayaya dotang chane chokchil songdo asro.
So now when you think about it, if you develop if you're displeased with something on the virtuous side, being displeased with it, not liking it, is non-faith. Also, you can say that if you develop a certain affinity to something that is on the non-virtuous side, so you like it, you have a sense of affinity with something that is not virtuous, that is non-faith.
Then dinangolaya zawa teba jangse undi ni gochodas. Teba message and teba janya chik gochores. Yang teba yedesag pinarangi lamalaya, teba yonaya, teba di kong peyak chedu, and teba shuk chedre chedu, teba jangsu chik, and ni yon chogres ra.
So here it is possible that you train in faith, this is say trust in something that you don't have faith in, or you train in faith in order to increase faith, to increase it more and more in something that you already trust, that you already have faith in.
어들 daddi 아니 라말이야 대구 딘디 슈치를 가진 땅 거랬어야지. 왜나 아니 대바 여바성 디그래 슈치를 갔다 거랬으려나 아니 가지고 대바 슈치와 뒤쪽이 아니 진럽 아니 뉴런 주야 산기 진럽디 라미균이 주고를 송연자 라마디 진럽 주고 아니 진럽디 아니 뉴르부 차야로 소바 아 틀린 베메 주야로 소비기 아니 지자 차기리스 지자 차고레스.
And the training in faith, the training in devotion, is what facilitates a swift engaging in the blessings of the Buddha, the teachings and the Buddha. Right, so that faith is that which enables, faith in them is that which enables the engagement, the receiving of swift blessings.
Tirdizada nganzu ta dichi samgudas pena lama di chinlab jusa go su chinlab jusa go reslaundi sangi gi kyabsum gi ani kyabi kunjosum gi chinlab jusa go di ani lama chagores tinanshin gi lama di ani kyabsum ya ani teba drosa gi go chagodas ro lami gi gyuni and ni kyabsum ya tebatrogo das lami gyuni and sangi koso tugi and yonden di nganzu togo das lami gyuni and sangi gi chedi nganzu nyengo das tandaro.
So you can look at that in a variety of ways. In that the Lama is the gateway for receiving the blessings of the body, speech, and mind of Buddha. So the Lama is the one that opened the gates, the gateway for that. Also, the Lama is the one that is showing you the way for receiving the blessings of the three objects of refuge. in that when you develop faith in the three objects of refuge, the faith is also facilitated through the teachings and instructions that you get from the spiritual teachers. So we need to realize in our own continuum such qualities of body, speech, and mind. And in order to give rise to those qualities of body, speech, and mind, we rely upon a Lama that instructs us, that teaches us how to do it. So through that, we receive those blessings.
아니 대비 대바 덴실레 대비 대바 망부여레스 디오 타랑 아니 다 라만 대비 대바 감들 아니 대바장세디 조 라만이야 송구여레스 제르무식다 다가는 대용거레스라.
And Lamrim Tsongkhapa points out that we speak about faith, but faith comes in different forms and shapes. Like, for example, you could have faith in the working of karma, actions and the results. You can have faith in the four truths. You can have faith in the Lama, the spiritual teacher. Here, the faith that Lamrim Tsongkhapa is looking at when it says the root of the path is training in faith, he says that it's faith in the spiritual teacher, in the Lama.
담번에 건조 딸이 송레스 대방 혼로 마들 깨바데 연된 탐제 송신 페버치 지 대비 연대 마기바 깨바다 깨스네바다 고네 콘도 페버 송라스 최주발이 꺄 강김제 망민종 대바티비 초인데 디세거든 데미미 대비 주순장한테 마데바이 메탈라 까비추는 미게디 사베미에 쓰벌 미궁고 지신 시 제순조도 거니 대바 연대 탐제 실송소스.
So with respect to the root training in faith, it says explanation of faith is the basis of all qualities. In drawing first from the jewel-blazed Dharani, it says faith, a preliminary practice, gives birth like a mother to all good qualities, guards them and make them increase. This says that faith gives birth to excellent qualities that have not yet arisen, and once they have come into existence, it maintains and increases them. In the Sutra of the 10 Dhammas, it says, that which leads to renunciation, the foremost vehicle is faith. For that reason, the intelligent rely on the pursuit of faith. In those who are lacking faith, virtuous phenomena do not arise. Likewise, in seeds that were burnt by fire, no green sprout can germinate. In terms of the forward and reverse pervasions, faith is said to be the foundation of all excellent qualities.
델레치 군조 단스 군조 단 렌데다 딘실라 대바 망비여야 데는 라만 데비 대바오스.
And this is the point that Geshe was referred to a couple of minutes ago when he speaks of identification of faith. Generally speaking, there are many types of faith in the jewels, the three jewels, in actions and their effects, in karma, and in the four noble truths. However, here it is faith in the Guru.
다들이다 달 렌델레 테주카레 덴실레 테주카레 군조솜레 테주카레 라만 테주카레 슬라바이나 다 타르토나 베나 이치레야 라리도스 니삼나 이치레 베나 아니 렌델레야 샘띵 이치체바디 렌델레 테바르와스 로 덴시 남샬레야 샘띵 다 다가란 레삼비게 이치 템부 여바 이나 덴실레 테바 These are Lamala, you sit in Puyabana, each chicken, Yachikana, each Malaya, and Chick Sanji Chu, Lamdinchi, Nangari, Ragari Sam, Yachikana, each chicken, and Drovina, Teparis, raw.
It says here, generally speaking, there are many types of faith in the jewels, in actions and their effects, and in the Four Noble Truths. However, here it is faith in the Guru. So you could have faith in the objects of refuge, faith in the presentation of the Four Truths, faith in the Lama, and so forth. So what it means is that you have a sense of trust in them. So for example, you have heartfelt trust in the working of karma. Actions produce their own results. Or you have complete trust in the presentation of the Four Truths. Likewise, you could have complete trust in the Lama, in that you completely trust them, 100% confidence that what they teach you is the path that the Buddha laid out.
란싱기 대바용이 디 남규다 비기 아니 군주의 참 만들어지기 라 나디세우쇼 챙겨서 니만간조 담보 비기래야 내고도 니도 주주래야 간조 도저기 단다 타부만부여서 초는 좋은디 먼저 딘 정강진을 데비컬이야 정강진은 짱모송인기 포설로신신 지 바다디다 지도로도 도서 지 냠마위로식 가시진도 콘주 아니 쇼게질이야 나데사가 좀 되는 짱모서 알레스 니 콘주라야 야하고무 가시지 아니 콘주를 제 싸우니 랭문도 콘주 아니 콘주 람산 베기 아니 빼고디 깜발라 인지민지 도지 넘버 콘주다 파미는 넘버를 둬스 아니 딘디 망보도 다 콘주야 장신 비기래야
So now when you try to describe it, it seems that that sense of trust, when you develop faith, that sense of trust that arises in your mind needs to be like a natural sense of trust. And you can look at different forms and shapes that it takes. It could arise, that natural sense of trust could arise in different situations, different scenarios. Just to illustrate that, in 2016, Geshe was in South India on a pilgrimage, and he visited Ajanta and Ellora caves. And we were staying at a place called Aurangabad, as far as I remember. And we stayed at a hotel, and there were a few staff members at the hotel. And a couple of them came up in the morning to clean Geshe's room, and Geshe wanted to give them some money, donation for cleaning his room. And in no way they would take his money. They bowed down to him. They went down on the floor and touched the forehead to his feet. And Geshe said that, no, so when you think of that, they grew up in a Buddhist culture. The parents were Buddhist. So for them, that sense of faith is something that kind of naturally arises in their mind. So you could say that, for example, as a manifestation or an example of that sense of faith that kind of is a natural arising of faith in your mind.
딘디 지능이 가드나야 아니 나 딘디도 콘즈냠도 바데진 콘즈라야 이 콘즈상도 지 최고토니 아니 난중고 주체에서 뜻이 로봇치도 콘즈 same thing 대바슈 전부 쇼도 야자 야탐바 뜻이 모두지만 콘즈의 쇼편사를 상상을 넘버 디나로야지 넘버 망부여서레스 이내 넘버 망체디 교 제레도스 라 딩이 삼나로에 소아디 예스라.
So then, having had that experience in Aurangabad in South India, Geshe thought to himself after that it'd be nice if he could spend some time in that place and teach the Dharma in a place like that. It seems that when you look at the local population or the environment in Aurangabad, it seems that there are many people that come from Buddhist background. They have a lot of faith, but they come from a poor background in the sense that their ability to study the Dharma, to go in depth into the Dharma study is quite limited. So Geshe kind of said after that it'd be really nice in a certain situation if he could spend some time in a place like that and reciprocate the kindness of people through giving Dharma teachings.
제산 야오름지기다 투기에 담제 15세씩 순고레스 야가나노라야 나넨자기 아니지 리종 아니 꺄소치에치 안 디송디게 지 가서 소슈체로 요르치 차그다 다이네야다 소소레 디티다 니바메디 니바도 만단디 아니 칼카우 두마도페 아니 셈슈 유스가라.
His Holiness often says that he has a few main points that he wants to promote in this lifetime. The fourth one is to restore the Nalanda tradition that was an ancient Indian tradition, Buddhist tradition that has disappeared quite a few centuries ago. So he says that one of his aspirations or commitments is to restore the Nalanda tradition. So Geshe says, at least in his heart, he has this growing feeling that may he be able to take part in that. May he be able to do that. It's hard to see a way that that could happen because you need to have special ability or particular capacity to be able to do that. And Geshe doesn't feel that he has currently the ability to do so, but he still feels strongly about it. When he hopes that he'll be able to take part in restoring the Nalanda tradition in India. Chiwa Kashishtu, Tandat Lena, Janajana.
Happening in Australia.
Sorry?
It's happening here.
It's happening here. Gala did Nalanda de Chulo de Negavlama Juna and Dila, the Lichidua, Nalanda Garden, Conan Bishop Sandachaguma rest in the Lam do
Rabon namde gudunga sejo ngazu kabe rabon namde gudunga rabon kunye de namde ta chimbashu yobodo namde ma luyo sarsam semde shu chiwarsa ni dizoro chiwarsa sangudela.
Yeah, maybe Geshe's kind of concerns or aspirations are like this Tibetan tale. So there's a tale about in Tibetan culture about a rabbit that was lying out on its back in the meadow, watching the clouds go by, right? So the blue sky, the clouds go by. And it was so absorbed in the passing of the clouds that it seemed that the sky is falling down on him, right? So he became terrified. So Geshe said that maybe his hopes to restore to be able to take part in the restoration of the Nalanda tradition is just like that, developing fear that the sky will fall down on him.
Kanji nga karsa dachi semje de yomares. Semje chinda pendoski yomanga semje de yomare ne ngi indi choma angone yabu yasara samsongi so dinga yores ro.
Anyway, telling a story like that is also a way of Tibetan sense of humor, which Geshe says that often we don't get it, right? So Tibetans have their own sense of humor. It doesn't always work here. But having told that story, Geshe says that it's not that he's that he's fearful or that he's anxious about it. May that happen? Now, if it happens, it's good, but Geshe doesn't really hold on to that with that sense of panic in his heart.
Kaya lama la chedar tawanis, loma tiki, lama la chedar tawani, lama doji onku gyulis, tachidan lamrim di, any do shishachin sungor de inia, lama tembi kapilaya, any kapilaya, gyu, and sanga doji tebigi, gyu ta long tinti danchin sungu yores ra, sang dabo, leven la, lome chedar tashina, sanji chomden de la chedava.
Then looking at the need to perceive the Buddha with regards to the Guru, to adopt the mental attitude of seeing the Lama as Buddha. It says, furthermore, as for the way to see the Guru, it says in the Tantra bestowing the initiation of Vajrapani. So although here Lama Tsongkhapa is teaching the steps of the path of enlightenment in a way that accords with the tantric tradition, with the sutra tradition, every once in a while it draws from tantric sources, from the Vajrayana. So here it draws from the Tantra bestowing the initiation of Vajrapani. It says a lot of secrets. How should the student see the master? Just like he would see the Buddha, the Blessed One.
Doa lekyan tedar somba yoto. Tedar ten karislana chedar sangi yimba shina tela kyondo lo munjonshi yonden sambi lonjonga tar lama ya chitu chedi kyondo ba namba tamji torshi yonden to lo jongos ten gyuter 레벤키네 연den소 견은 나요 소모자 연den소나 무르도 견은 소모 무무주 제송부터 자디 데달라마 연데 실체와 인야 디견 중세 유병은 땅 라는 무주지 계수결라스 견 실체야 견 중은 마다바 연된 중은 대바잖아 무주조의 유규위체로스
After this quotation, it says, similar statements can be found in the collection of Mahayana Sutras and in the Vinaya. The meaning is this: if you understand that someone is like a Buddha, a mind conceiving faults in him will not arise, but rather a mind thinking about his excellent qualities. Likewise, with regard to a guru, you should purposefully abandon any concepts of faults in every respect while training in the mind that conceives excellent qualities. So the disadvantages of conceiving faults in that person are explained in the following section. In addition, the above tantra says, which means the tantra bestowing the initiation of Ajapani, apprehend your master's excellent qualities, do not apprehend his faults. Apprehending his qualities, you will gain siddhis. Apprehending the faults, they cannot be gained. You should act accordingly. Thus, if excellent qualities predominate in your guru, but you think about him in terms of the few faults he has, this will become an obstacle to your own siddhis. Even if faults predominate, if you train in faith from the perspective of their excellent qualities without thinking about him in terms of his faults, this will become a cause for siddhis to come about. Therefore, when it comes to your own guru, whether his faults are great or small, contemplate the disadvantages of thinking about him from that perspective. Repeatedly generate a mind to abandon this and make it stop.
텐동 여번 통양 르위 연딩이 총진비 대발의 계순으로 말이스 빼노 조천비 따와 우먼진지 라마셀림비 따와 심진비 따와 덴벌진비 따위고는 처음에 예장 대벌진비 람기름바 지다 잔주지 툭세나 잔주심 순걸 이 콩나데니 니비 라마셀림바디 라만남기 따 젠기 도다메도 징기오레스.
The way of restraining concepts of fault is explained in the following paragraph. If concepts of faults arise due to carelessness, a lot of afflictions, and so forth, you should apply yourself to confession and restraint. If you familiarize yourself with them in this manner, you may see that there are a few faults, but since your mind holds on to the side of excellent qualities, it will not become an obstacle to your faith. For instance, just to illustrate this attitude, the great elder Atisha upheld the view of the Madhyamika, while Suvarnabhipa or Lama Selimpa upheld the view of the true Aspectarian Sutta Mantra, which is why, in terms of the view, one was higher than the other. So Atisha held a high philosophical thought to his teacher, Lama Selimpa. However, it says, as he discovered the general stages of the Mahayana path and bodhicitta relying upon him, upon Lama Selimpa, he regarded Suvarnabhipa as unequaled among spiritual teachers.
이마디 고점에라was 이내 소수 게르는 상담이나 아니 소수 게겐다 야원무지니 소수 게르야 이 베디 아니 잔담에버도치 아니 소수 게디 가든 친구이마디 나랑 삼는 솔고이스 라 이는 이 게디 야원무지 하지 레스 라바이나 아니 미수지 난 조마라was 이내 소수 게르야 야원무지 하지 가든 치어지 매와이나 멤버 싸우니니 remember the same thing and the use.
So just to illustrate this point, you could say that when we look at contemporary teachers, contemporary spiritual teachers, probably you could say that there's no one that is more renowned, famous, or appreciated than His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So it became like this widely renowned spiritual teacher. And yet Geshe says that on a personal level, when he thinks of his own root Lama, you can say that on a personal level, his own root Lama was even greater in terms of kindness than His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So having said that, the point is not then to create this competition of who is the kindest person in the world. No, that's not the point. It's more like you could say that in general, there's someone that is highly revered and respected. And yet on a personal level, when you think of your own personal situation, you can appreciate a certain person to be even kinder to you. Or at least you can say that if they're not kinder to you, at least they're equal in terms of their kindness.
And the test Sanji Chile, test and the one tray down. Tabayoyadi, gang cutting yachi, but the same thing we use, right?
When Geshe studied in a monastery with his teacher, there were 5 or 6 classes a day. Tuesday was a break, a holiday. But even that, even during Tuesdays, if Geshe had a question or doubt, then he would take it up with his teacher, and his teacher never said, "Leave me alone, I'm too tired." No, this is Tuesday, it's my day off. He never got that answer. His teacher was still kind of working hard in order to enhance and develop the knowledge of his students. So because of that, because of the kindness of his teacher, Geshe got to develop some knowledge, but also the ability to share that knowledge with others. That comes through the kindness of the teacher.
Sanji musta tubaina, Sanji chilla mus juguyas, and Kazusigi and Levi chata to a teachugi and Sanji chiliti, Yungudas, Sozula. That Matubaina, Tara, and Sanji chili yadi, Garo Ajimado, Sozula, Yora Ajimado, and it Pigi Gendas Lamaya, Keva Kayomaros, the rock Keva Kayomaros.
So if you think of the qualities of the Lama, the spiritual teacher, if you think of the qualities of body, speech, and mind of the teacher, and you see them as qualities of body, speech, and mind of Buddha, through them, you will receive the blessings of the Buddha. You receive them through the teacher, through the Lama. If you see the Lama as being a Buddha in actuality, you receive the blessings of an actual Buddha. So it depends upon you. If you see them as such, you will receive those blessings. If you don't see them as such, you'll not receive the blessings of Buddha, which means that not being able to see the Guru as Buddha doesn't really affect the Lama. Doesn't make a difference to the Lama. The difference is made in you, in a sense. So it matters to your ability to receive the blessings of the Buddha or not to receive the blessings of the Buddha.
Lamrim Mambu Lama la Yunde Tagudi, and a Ran la Kendo la Common Diviches. Lama la Kenda Minindi, Ran la Kendo la Common Diviches, or Deus Druyoris.
In Lamrim text, it is said that you should see the Lama in this way because you get benefit from that, and there is no fault in that whatsoever. So there are a few questions here, but also,
I wanted to raise a controversy.
so maybe let's stop with the question.
Stop
No.
that if you want.
No, I'm just
If
joking.
it's okay, Geshe, just stop the controversy.
Throw a spanner in the work.
Yeah, so, Geshe, in Tibet, Lama Zopa Rinpoche talked about one situation in Tibet where the abbot, so I'm looking at, where the Lama is engaging in non-virtue, and that are ways, maybe they're engaging in virtue, and nonetheless people have taken that person as their teacher. So this abbot had written a hate letter to His Holiness, and the monastery found out he was Tsultrim practitioner, right? So they found out, and they all turned their backs on that abbot, and Rinpoche said they clapped him out of the monastery, basically, leave. So all of those had taken him as their teacher previously, but now they were all turning their backs on him because that, I guess, the act of non-virtue or that engagement was greater than the virtuous qualities in their esteem. So there are maybe there are those situations, but many situations that occur like that with further knowledge, you say, you've checked out the teacher, maybe they've brought you up, but then at some later stage, you find out something like this. And so would there be a fault then in turning your back on them as a teacher?
So what about the logic sense? So the pyogi gomba lama chi kembo chi gyaren boche la chakchi chi pyne gyaren boche la den kyun shiwa chi den sonsa teacher la gomba di lama kembo ka chewa di hakone kembo di pi sonsa ni kola den de jam mengyo kola den de kacho ba kalo den de che sonsa 세상 탐보 캠보디 되실 라마땡 디젤라피 세상 데이터가 상상하다와이나 근데 갑갑라 된데 미게웨 촉 된데 슈 쳔보 조와이나 삼산은 텐사 라마디 근데 데와 체나 디그레베스 디나 디그레베스 As you said, this is a controversial issue. So the lama did la di tingido.
Nanzugi nyogdi kechadi kazui na nyongoya jida ani nganzula goya gi kamedi kazui na mangoya dochi jida dindis redo asra.
Yeah, so this is not a controversial issue. In general, we need less controversial issues, more positive issues.
These are danjing issue na shingi. Lama temne de sedi susu semla remato pigi namgyurda dindichani chago marwas. Susu semla ya susu teba shani lama tensavi jelaya kawal tuna ya and chulu chongona mele chongona chom tungi chawena lama pi tobi yonde keba meba susula and chogumudruti druguyores tako chitso jigne deondi ya chitso rodang tone rodang chigda semgunang samsudi ni yongchogros right.
When you think of having faith in the Lama as being trust, and you develop trust in your heart in that person, you might come to the point where, if you have to jump in fire or kind of jump across the body of water or jump into the deep end or what have you, if you trust that person, you will do it. So when you develop faith in a certain spiritual teacher, in a certain Lama, this is the type of trust that you develop. So on a society level, there are affairs in society. and you deal with affairs in society in a particular way. But still, privately, in your heart, you need to look at whether you have trust in the person or not.
아니 베나 가르쳐거다. 겨울무질 쉬어야 있네요. 지난 쉬어요. 생기마 아니 다지 디난신기 내주 총진 다디기 토마디 다 코란 차들을 도시 라마디 겨울무질이야. 코란기 라마 게긴 쪼디 겨울무질이야. 카당에차 코란 차들을 도다. 차들을 도군도 람람 공원디 람람 공 신인 공원디 신인 쪼디 아니 게인드 마공 랑공지. 가서 까든 치주도 곧디 차거라. 마공 랑공지 차지. 안고 니머지 겨울무질 도치 안 딘디레스 안 얘기 아니 신인 공원디게 신인 때서 뭐 공원디게 아니 게인지 가서 다지 raman meba and yil shell yung dos karchi go shudo keran tagaran gom gores yawno ji kana tagaran gom gor sonda madu keran di shagore di chenyamar tsawni somun dos.
When this whole controversial issue of this practice arose in Tibetan society, there was one monk that decided to go into retreat as a hermit because his teacher was involved in some criticism that was waged against His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and the student couldn't cope with that. So he decided to leave and to go on a hermit style retreat, and it was a Lamrim retreat. So he started to read through the section of relying upon a spiritual teacher and how you should consider a spiritual teacher, and it was conflicted. So he went to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama and said that, this is what Lama Tsongkhapa said in his text. This is how you need to rely upon a spiritual teacher. But his spiritual teacher was one of the people that have criticized His Holiness strongly. So he asked His Holiness what to do. Well, His Holiness says that basically it has to do with who you trust and who you have faith in. If you have faith in the person, you regard him as a spiritual teacher. This is what you need to do. This is how you need to meditate. So Geshe will leave that controversy like that in this stage. So then Claire is asking, would Geshe recommend checking out authors of modern Buddhist books before we accept the words and advices Dharma? If that would be recommended, how can we do that? Dila tanda chigela inchige tola teb draminda den tengirwa. Dila so den de esikuran chiwa di zombabo tenso lama maina tsena chigegi kebarwa keba tawa tsuma dila sabat dirwa. Ta gonzo seni yotan med 탭도는 간직다고 그랬어. 콘조디 칼라디 추칼라디 추레 마레 타추 간직체고 그랬어.
근데 찍랍지해서 안 치게 되려야. 아니 라마디 피초그래요. 라마디 샘나무에 차슈슈 다시 차서. 마디시시도 어디 기질라다.
Before Geshe answers that, there's still another thing that came up in his mind in relation to Chugula's question. Well, if you ask whether there comes a time in which it is all right to turn your back on a certain lama for a certain, for a certain action, can you, kick them out and so to speak? Geshe said that it is kind of a really disquieting question. It's kind of creates that kind of heavy burden in one's heart.
Yeah,
it's pretty hard, isn't it?
Yeah. Then Chidan Nambi Chokora, Taji Shimju Che, you Chagoras, Taji Shimju Chijin, Pena, Dursa Mangulea, Dursa, and Dintilla Dursini, and Kunzu Teptola Tija Gitia. And touch over this on Tebamu Shuji, Tep Chitan, Tep Tia, Lela Shuji Chagores, Coffee Chia, Bella Chagores, 민 교리에 뺄래라고 자고 그랬어. 라마를 용 적으러 왔어.
Well, one thing is that you can get involved in comparative studies. So you read a certain book, a certain text written by a certain person, but now we have, at this day and age, we have access to a lot of printed material. So rather than just taking one book and trying to assess whether the person is a qualified person and so forth, you can actually look at other texts, other books, do some comparative study, and then see whether whatever that person has written is credible, whether it is correct, accurate, and so forth. There's so many there's so many copies floating around, so many things are available at the moment. So Geshe reckons that in some sense, it makes that analysis and investigation even easier.
다 투니 지금 소소 나오셨댔죠? 콘서트 좀버부터 투 아니 파스다 지원전에 치와이나 아니 지위기 랭크 톤다 원에기 지 지역가주 살도 신기어버디 대용 거로 왔어.
And also, you can become informed yourself. So you study the Dhamma, you develop knowledge. And if you have an opportunity to meet one of those people that write books, and writing a book is something that is not that hard, it's quite easy. So if you get to meet that person in person, and you get the chance to ask questions and so forth, then through your own knowledge, you can also assess how much do they know.
지당 콘솔라 제주 창이 라민 천인 창이 야샤야 담바 용거로 왔어. 그러 간스나 학들도 지 니 통술라야 아니 노쇼베 미디 춘중 공네 럽종 친 용인자 럽종기 지당 럽종기 시제데 세 통불론이 르여인자 아니 나주 아니 규름부 맞잖아요. 아니 야구 셋통부 시투야기 and 자기비 do 상도스 라.
And also Geshe reckons that it is likely that amongst non-Tibetan scholars, foreigners, there are certainly a few people that do have all the characteristics of fully qualified spiritual teachers. At least in terms of, Geshe says that when you look at education systems, the education system that we have in place like that is quite advanced. So the ability to become learned and informed is even quicker. You can expedite your Buddhist study ability through using your educational background from before and become a scholar even in a shorter span of time.
samsung ngida chere kishing marde in dust and theodang 중간에 가시 원이 and 내가 코랑 따다따다 유튜브기 and number roch 돈 theodang and gawo payudos ra 당신 pe gawodos.
I guess I can say that because sometimes in the course of teachings people ask questions, and some of the questions are pretty, you can say hot questions. They get straight to the point, and they can be quite sharp. So just looking at the level of questions that sometimes come up from the audience, Geshe gets the feeling that even though a certain discourse is given over a short period of time, it seems that people in general have the ability to go straight to the heart of the matter. Okay. So Shannon is asking, how about if there are teachers who don't inspire joy in one's mind, but rather a sense of fear to practice the Dhamma rise when you listen to them? Ta gewe shenyengi tenzo shua. Dida sosa semla gewe shenyen la dende gawa dende malenayan ine chu nyamne machewa ina yabo yongi mare sinan dende kige rawas. Chensan gawa malenayan sinan dende lewa ina kandechi inas.
gawa malena 신학 가진 레고다. 걔는 가오 말레 신학 가진 레고です.
Well, Geshe is just wondering about this situation. If you listen to teaching from a teacher, a certain teacher, why would you have fear and you wouldn't also have a sense of affinity with that person? That you will not, that would not inspire joy in your mind, that would inspire just fear. Why would that happen?
Well, in the Catholic Church, that's the way they often work. They really instill a sense of fear.
But here we're doing Buddhism.
We often, many of us were taught within the Catholic tradition, and that's the way they taught.
Dila di Yeshu chulo di rikchi ro. Dila kecha setan di dende shenang kune gone dende chegero. Chesan peshe kashi dende nyama dende soso pame gi chulo di Catholic ina peshe komshi denda ochi chayo saresa.
Dilda mado ngone pi lamateni chu ngon tungi jimbaina chu ngon tungi jimbaina gyunse yona and kelen gyunse mena shenachi mugo wadi nambi chu namalaya tomomai wechik tengo res.
Yeah, Geshe acknowledges that. It says that when you listen to teachings from a teacher, then you need to think of whether the explanation that you get makes sense, whether it is supported by reason. If it is reasonable, if it is logical, you can accept it. Now, if it doesn't make sense to you, if it's not logical, then you can decide not to accept it, but then there is no reason then to become fearful of it. So this Geshe feels that if you keep that in mind with your approach to the Buddhist tradition, then you can avoid that sense of fear that could arise. So you think that it is all right that Buddhist tradition permits not accepting certain sets of teachings, and you don't have to be fearful about it.
Tapi machina mendi any magawale de peshe tensul testi digyo yimares. Kyondo lo mambuch levaina magawale giras.
Chesan Quran magawa ran layo mare de. Gawa mixegi ganan de mix legi mare. Ganan sabla shinan de les. So then, going back to the question, it says that if they don't inspire joy in your mind, but rather they inspire fear, then Geshe says that just continue to study and see how it goes. All right, let's dedicate the virtue that we have thus created. Rinpoche Madre Pangri Gyuji Kefanyam Pamitayo Kone Kundu Kawashu Kowe Shinkansu Endande Wamalu Juwene Chenrese Wante Zinso Shapesi Te Paradu Tenyo Yave Ten Zinkyo Tewe Kunzo Do Bose Choso Kowe Memo Dudru Maso Tuje Kundu Shaten Shu.
Thank you.
No. Yes, what?
I will ask, I want to make a request.
Okay. I'm very much inside.
Geshe, could you please give commentary to the Lama Sankapa Tanka?
네가 제일 먼저 방어수와 네 대신 그거는
그럼 좀 적신.
So
간단하게. 갑자기 나는 regarding 갑자기
yeah, so the one in that you gave in the Master's Garden, this one? Like the one of the Guru Puja or the one in?
Oh, I was thinking of the one. Okay.
Like, I think that it's
Yeah, this one, I think.
probably this one, right? Similar to this one.
yes, the 간단하게.
Yeah, so similar to this one or the Guru Puja?
I was thinking of similar to this one.
Yeah, especially the
그 지금 이제 람림의 주고 같은데요. 아니 소리 길이 가운데에 지도 정리기 이 쉬는 게 있어요. 근데 막 지난 주간에 맞잖아.
especially most of the hanging room, what? Especially some passante, it's one Discussion. What is this? Swabbling.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Just some offerings, Geshe.
Just me or
It is,
with the translator?
As you wish, Geshe.
It depends. If it's coffee and chocolate, they'll have.
Has he done what you like? Okay.
Embarrassed Puna. Puna made 7 lotus incense holders in the altar. She made.
All right. Where? Oh, yeah. Hold on.
I did Anchor's help.
Oh, that's good.
7.
So ceramic, right?
Yeah, for pottery.
With
But this happened to be my dad's birthday. Yes, I just remembered it.
So you did have to do it with that?
Anchor.
Right?
No, we did this in time to give my kids and this.
Yeah.
Time.
But is anchor running or is it?
No,
All right. Okay. Okay. The plugin, so what should we do in the 2 weeks? So you're going to do a retreat, right? Yeah. Yeah. So you're in Italian and
You're good already?
Yeah.
Dutch. I'm just announcing. We have some of it. Myanmar, Duntachi, New South Wales, very just
28. No, the day before we started, the Monday.
Monday. Sunday. Yeah. So then there's a money retreat.
Yeah, separate.
Yeah, but there's a money retreat happening the first week Hi there, Olaf. You're double dipping. Hey, thanks, Serena. How are you?